Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, today I'm at a hotel in Queens, New York City. It's right by LaGuardia Airport. In fact, when I look out my window, I can actually see planes on the runway, right? So just understand the different background here. Let's talk about a big fight that's on the horizon in the United Kingdom between Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg. Now, Frampton is a mild favorite in this one. The odds I've seen are Frampton at about a minus 150, minus 160. In other words, bet 150 to win 100, right? Or bet 160 to win 100, right? He's a mild favorite, and he's the guy I'm taking in this fight. Now, let me say this. Frampton, for me, is a blind spot. I look at Frampton, and I just don't know how he pulls it off. I'm just being blunt here. He's so unorthodox that at times he looks really amateurish to me. The first knockdown in his last fight against Alejandro Gonzalez looked like he just didn't have good balance, right? Looked like he was a little bit lost. The second knockdown in that fight, right? He gets knocked down twice in the first round. It's a very hard overhand right that Gonzalez hits him with. Frampton is lucky to have survived the round. Well, what's interesting is after that round, Gonzalez tries that right hand again, and Frampton just didn't look prepared for it, in my mind. Right? Let me also say, too, Gonzalez in that fight throws a lot of punches to Frampton's body. Now, I understand some of these punches go low. But as I'm watching Gonzalez throw body shots on Carl Frampton, I didn't see Frampton really make a lot of adjustments. Right? So I'm that person watching Frampton, and I just can't figure it out. It's like his balance seems different to me. He doesn't really seem to be making as many adjustments as you think he should in the ring. But there's some part of him, as unorthodox that he is, there's some part of him that delivers. After he gets off the canvas in that first two knockdown round against Gonzalez, he then proceeds to dominate the fight. You look at him, and there are times where he's on his front foot and he cuts off the ring against a slugger, right, Gonzalez? And he looks very convincing, especially when he gets that left hand going, right? He hits Gonzalez with a lot of great clean lefts, and you understand this guy is a bit of an artist. Very hard to duplicate this kind of unorthodox fighter in training. Now, what I want people to do is to look at Scott Quigg against Johannes Salinas, right? We're researching these guys. Now, Quigg is unquestionably one of the best conditioned fighters in the sport of boxing, right? Quigg is that workhorse guy who is always in spectacular shape. He's always ready to fight. I get the feeling if the right offer came along, you could call up Scott Quigg's people and say, hey, we need Scott to fight a world-class fighter tomorrow. And Quigg would be in shape to do it, right? He's kind of like, Marvin Hagler, Vitaly Klitschko, right? He's always in shape. Well, let me say this. The problem with Quigg, in my opinion, is that he's an overachiever, right? He's a dedicated workman with a punch. But Against Salinas, he loses, depending on how you saw the fight. Either the first 5 rounds of that fight, the first 6 rounds of that fight, or the first 7 rounds of that fight. By the way, that Salinas fight was ruled a draw. Now that's troublesome because Salinas, after that fight, lost twice. Right after that fight. In other words, Salinas wasn't a world beater. But yet, he fought Quigg in such a way that many people thought he got robbed in the fight. Scott Quigg, after the fight, think about it. This is Quigg himself. Said in an interview that he thought he won the fight by 1 round or 2 rounds. In other words, Quigg in a 12-round fight thought the fight should have been scored 6-5-1 or 7-5. Right? Against an opponent who, don't get me wrong, had a lot of amateur bouts. Right? But I'm sure it wasn't on your short list of great fighters in the division. Right? To win that fight, by the way, Quigg, who has a height advantage on Carl Frampton, right? He has a height advantage. But to beat Salinas, Quigg had to come inside. In other words, Quigg doesn't have the back foot game. Right? He's not a guy who's going to be able to say, hey, I'm taller than you. I'm going to use length, Carl. You're not going to be able to land that left on me. That's not who Scott Quigg is. Right? I believe Scott Quigg wins his fights because he does hit hard. He lands big shots early, and if he doesn't do that, then he wilts you because he's the better athlete. I don't think that's going to work against Carl Frampton. Right? I believe Frampton will be able to have a camp where he'll have guys like Quigg, right? Because Quigg is just an in-shape, athletic, hard-working guy. Right? What he's doing in the ring isn't that different, right? It's not that unorthodox. In other words, a guy like Salinas was able to figure out Quigg, was able to neutralize what Quigg was doing, round after round after round, right? Dominates the first half of the fight. Now, Frampton, by contrast, is different. Right? As I've said, I've looked at a few Frampton fights. I believe I even made a video here online a year ago where I said Frampton's a blind spot for me. And I'll see Frampton against credible opponents who are on their front foot trying to catch up with him. Kiko Martinez, who, by the way, both men fought. And Frampton, who doesn't even look to me like he has leverage, will just throw a punch from left field and the other guy will just get stood up. Right? I don't understand Frampton's leverage. What I do know, though, right? I don't understand Frampton's game plan at times. Right? Take a look at that Gonzalez fight. I mean, Frampton repeatedly gets hit in the rib cage, right? And low, right? Repeatedly. And you don't really see Frampton drop his hands and cover his body or bend at the waist. So, I'm one of those who believes what Bill Russell used to say, the great American basketball player. He said the great ones are always different. Right? I believe Frampton's unorthodox style, his ability to fight you on his front foot or on his back foot and throw power punches doing so, his ability to deliver big-time punishment from his non-dominant hand, supposedly, right? He's fighting out of an orthodox stance, and he's pulverizing you with this left hand, right? And the fact that if Scott Quigg steps inside on Frampton, like he stepped inside on Salinas, he's going to be met with big-time resistance. Understand, in Frampton fights, Frampton's the one who closes the show in the later rounds, right? Frampton's the one who dominates the later part of the fight against Gonzalez, right? On some scorecards, Frampton wins something like 10 rounds in that fight, 10, 11 rounds in that fight, right? So I don't think Frampton's going to wilt. I don't think Quigg's superior or special conditioning is going to give him the edge in the later rounds. And I just don't think Quigg, who's a workman, is the boxing artist Carl Frampton is, right? Frampton's singular. When you see a guy who doesn't even seem to have his feet set on some punches, but yet the other guy is getting hit and dropped, right? When you see a guy who, gets hit with really a light punch and has his balance off to the point where he falls to the canvas like he does the first knockdown in the Gonzalez fight, and you're looking at him and you're uncertain about the guy's balance, right? The guy never really looks completely set. When you see a guy like that and the guy's unbeaten and the guy has fought world-class fighters for some time, right? The guy has a share of the belt. Then you have to realize, hey, this guy is, in the words of Frank Sinatra, he's doing it his way. And his way is very effective, right? As Rendell Monroe knows, Scott Quigg is a great body puncher, right? He's really great. If I had to hedge the play I would like would be to take the favorite, Carl Frampton, to win the fight, right? If I had only one bet to make, I'd take Frampton to win, right? The hedge I'm going to recommend is Frampton to win the fight, hedged with Quigg by KO, right? All I'm saying is Quigg has the kind of power where, in my opinion, his power has mass deficiencies in his boxing, right? He's won some fights because he's landed big shots and other guys just haven't been able to survive them. But when you look at Quigg fights, you don't see Quigg methodically outbox guys like Salinas, right? You don't. Rather, you see Quigg getting outboxed because Quigg really is a master puncher, not a master boxer. So I expect Carl Frampton to win this fight. I'm going to hedge the play with the underdog by KO. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.